During a luncheon conversation the other day, Dame Myra Hess confided in me that she has a horror of talking into the microphone and that she becomes tongue-tied at the mere thought of an interview. Well, what you'll hear now is certainly not an interview. It's nothing more or less than a brief fragment of what to me was a most engaging conversation with an artist I've admired for many years. To be sure, there was a microphone between us, but it was turned on only 10 minutes or so during what turned out to be a 2-hour visit, just as Dame Myra was telling about her very first appearance in public.
It was a concert with Mr. Thomas Beecham, his first orchestral concert in Queen's Hall. And I played Beethoven No. 4, Saint-Saëns No. 4.
In one concert?
And a group of solos. And Beecham, as far as I remember, did an entire symphony program as well, and that all happened on the same night.
From 7 until 1 a.m., undoubtedly.
And it was very long, and I remember he was so busy with his own rehearsal that I had to get to Queen's Hall an hour before this terrible concert began to finish rehearsing my second concerto.
Mr. Thomas Beecham, this must have been several years ago.
Yes, before you were born.
No, I don't think so. I looked up the date.
BC.
Is it fair to ask you how old you were at that time? Your debut with orchestra?
I was 17.
Gee whiz.
Yes, now...
What a beginning.
Take you the rest of the interview to count out. I told you it was BC.
Was that the first performance in public, or had you played recitals before that?
No, that was my debut in I'd played at students' concerts, but that was my first big concert in London, and Mr. Beecham and I shared the concert. He'd had small orchestra concerts in what was then the Bechstein Hall in London, but this was his first symphonic concert.
So that was a debut
so
really
we made
for
our
both.
debut, yes.
Oh, yes. You had received a scholarship to the Royal Academy some years before that, hadn't you?
Yes.
Well, then you must have been... Will you excuse the expression, a child prodigy?
No, thank God I wasn't. Or should I say thank heaven I wasn't?
Well, you were in a way, though, because...
No, I was never a prodigy. I was a very slow worker. I got a scholarship when I was about 13, and I went to Tobias Mehta.
Yes.
And I'd never learned to think until I went to Tobias Mehta.
You had studied before?
I had studied before.
You had other teachers?
Yes, I had started when I was 7 and had various professors of various nationalities. And finally I went to Tobias Mehta, and he showed me that I hadn't been taught to think at all.
What sort of a person was he?
He's one of the greatest spirits of this century, and one of the greatest teachers of any kind, because he had the mind of a scientist and the love of music, two things which don't always go hand in hand. And so that his pupils were always taught the significance of music, always before the significance of technique. He always said he had no religion excepting music, but he was one of the greatest Christians that ever lived. He believed in everybody, and he took an enormous personal interest in all his students. Mm-hmm. He never spared himself at all. If he had a pupil he believed in, and they were to have 40 minutes lesson, it probably began on Tuesday morning and finished on Wednesday evening, that lesson.
I wanted to ask you about his belief so far as memorizing is concerned. Is it one thing that he felt was unimportant?
I never remember Mr. Matty talking very much about it, because the thing he minded most about always was the integrity of a performance, the musical value of the performance. Whether you stood on your head or had your music or didn't have your music was irrelevant, as long as you got somewhere near the spirit of the music. It was the only thing he minded about.
Someone told me that the first performance you gave in public, you started to play the piano before you sat down at the piano stool.
Oh, yes.
Was that at Queen's Hall?
No, I wasn't a prodigy, but when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Was made to take part in some charity concert.
Oh.
And then I did begin playing my little piece before I sat on the stool. I remember I played a little study by Stephen Heller for an encore. I had a great success. I played a rondo alla turca by Gurlitt.
By whom?
Gurlitt.
Don't know Gurlitt.
Gurlitt.
Should I?
No, you're much too young. And you needn't either. You don't miss anything by not knowing Gurlitt.
No, I think you should play Gurlitt as encores in some of your programs now.
You better not suggest it. I probably will. Surprise people a little. I suppose he was one of those stepping stones. They were quite good pieces at that time.
Tell a story about the orange. You play piano with an orange sometimes.
That's not an original sin.
It isn't.
No, I saw somebody else do it.
How's it done? No, I didn't believe it. Is it
the
true?
most effective way to play the black key study of Chopin.
The most effective?
Yes. I mean, you
for you or for the listener?
Your left hand does what it normally should. And then you just roll an orange up and down on the black keys with your right hand, and it sounds very good indeed.
Any of the, just the black notes, of course?
Yes.
Well, do the...
Just for the black key study. I mean, I've never been able to use an orange for anything else.
No, literally, can you hit the right notes when you roll an orange?
Yes, you have to practice a little so that you start in the right key, finish in the right key. Needs a little bit skill, but...
I should think it might.
No, the best orange story I have was during the war, when we'd had a bomb on the National Gallery, and the ceiling of our concert room had a leakage, and the rain was coming in, and I realized if it couldn't be mended at once, we'd have to stop the concerts. And as it happened, I knew a very nice young man at the Office of Works, who happened to like Beethoven quartets and so on. And at that time, we'd forgotten about oranges. We never saw any. But somebody had sent me 2 oranges from Tasmania or Australia or somewhere.
Yeah.
So I rushed down to Trafalgar Square with an orange and met this young man. I said, if you'll have that ceiling mended this afternoon, I'll give you an orange. So he had the orange and mended the ceiling for us. That orange was very valuable.
I should say it is.
If I had gone through the usual channels of government offices, probably been taken 3 weeks to get that roof mended.
Did you have very many narrow escapes like that at the National Gallery
Oh,
concerts?
yes.
Really? Bombs falling when you were playing?
Once or twice bombs fell during the concerts. But we never stopped. We went on.
You just went on? Did the audience stay?
The audience stayed, yes. It's incredible what you can get used to, you know. I sometimes had to make forced crescendos to try and hide the noise of the flying bombs.
Oh, the flying bombs, the last
flying
ones
bombs
were the worst.
Yes.
Yes.
I was playing the Schubert B-flat impromptu once, you know, the one with the variations.
Mm.
And I started the lovely minor variation, and a flying bomb began to come near. And if you'd come in the middle, you'd have thought I was playing the Brahms B-flat concerto. I made tremendous crescendo. And then when the bomb went further away, I made a decrescendo. And nobody noticed what had happened.
Nobody noticed the bomb, or nobody noticed
that I'd
the
made
crescendo?
a big crescendo. It was a real synchronization.
Did you play at the Festival of Britain last year?
Oh, did I? Did I?
Tell me.
Yes, I played all over the country, and I played 12 Mozart concertos in London at the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Did you play in the new festival hall?
And then I played in the new festival hall.
Alone or with orchestra?
With orchestra. I haven't given a recital there yet.
Well, what's your opinion of acoustics? We've read a great deal, pro and con, about the acoustics of
Well, I
Festival
think it's
Hall.
a splendid hall. It's something quite new for London. We've got to get used to it. We were all sentimentally attached to the Queen's Hall, and we feel nothing will ever take its place.
It's being rebuilt,
does.
isn't it, Queen's Hall?
Well, we were promised it would be, but now with the new restrictions again,
Oh dear, has it been changed since I've read the
Well,
announcement?
the last budget news didn't look very hopeful. We were promised that the foundation stone would be laid during the festival. That hasn't happened yet.
Yes, they were going to take the building adjacent
Yes.
in addition to make it much larger.
We're always praying it will be rebuilt, but with the new restrictions, heaven knows whether I shall ever see Queen's Hall again.
Well, the festival hall isn't awfully handy for Londoners, is it, to have to cross the
Well,
river?
it isn't as far away as we think, but just because it isn't in the place where we've always been used to have music, we think it's off the map.
You played in Edinburgh, too, didn't you?
Yes. Oh, that was great experience.
Did you play with our New York Philharmonic
I played with
Symphony?
Your New York
You did?
Philharmonic Symphony, and it was a tremendous
What
success.
concerto?
Played Beethoven 4, and then the Schumann concerto.
2 concertos.
Well, I was only engaged to play 1 concerto. They thought 1 would be quite enough for me. But then, unfortunately, Rudolf Serkin apparently was ill and unable to come, and so I stepped in and took his place. Pretended to take his place, should we say.
When you were in Edinburgh, were you able to hear any concerts by the Philharmonic when you weren't participating as a performer?
Yes. I went to several of the concerts, and they were absolutely packed.
Did the audience like the Philharmonic?
Oh, an enormous enthusiasm, but real enthusiasm.
It's good to know.
For both conductors and Metropolis and Walter, they both had ovations. But it was an enormous success, the orchestra.
Well, I'm awfully glad to hear
It
it.
was tremendous excitement and enthusiasm, appreciation.